I think maybe we'll go ahead and start, Jared. If you're ready, I'm ready, and I'll kick it off.
That sounds good. Yeah, go for it.
All right, super. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for spending some time with us today on the webinar. We're talking about key takeaways from Xerocon. And then obviously also Jared and I are co-founders of an app called Uncat, which you may be familiar with already. You may use it. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, we specialize in uncategorized transactions. So for those that use Xero, we essentially help you to get answers back from clients about suspense transactions. So when transactions hit the suspense account, oftentimes it's because you don't know exactly where they should be categorized, and you need to have a communication, a dialogue with your client. And rather than export an Excel spreadsheet or send it via a Google Sheet, which is what most of us have done historically, we built an app that sync in those transactions, automatically notify your client so you can get answers back, and then enable you to categorize from there. We also support client requests. So in other words, are you trying to get a W-9 or a bank statement back, or you have another question for a client about an upcoming board meeting or an audit or tax deadline, et cetera. And then finally, Jared built a great module, which we released earlier this year called Uncat Receipts, that enables your clients and you to update receipts, and will automatically parse those receipts, looking for vendor and line items and amounts and dates, and then match them to the right transactions in Xero. We also have an integration with QuickBooks Online and with QuickBooks Desktop. So many firms use a combination of all of those platforms. We support all of them. So we'll kind of show you around Uncat in a little bit. We'll give you a quick mini tour. But first, we'll start with Xerocon. So Xerocon happens in a couple places, and one of the Xerocons this year is in London. I'm talking about my experience, which was in Nashville, Tennessee, about 3 hours away from where Jared and I live in Knoxville. So I attended Xerocon Nashville. Certainly the content is going to be the same or similar between the two. Historically, Xerocon in the United States is hosted every 2 years. I think it was a very successful year based on all the feedback that I heard. And I asked a lot of people because we had a booth there. So I had a chance to talk with several hundred people and say, how is the conference going? How are you enjoying the programming? Yeah, will you come to the next Xerocon? Everyone seemed to be really bullish about it. A lot of people had been to previous Xerocons, and for those that were new, they said they want to come back in the future. So I don't know if that means that Xero will come back a little bit sooner and maybe have a conference next year, but it could be 2026, also known as the World Cup year, when they next come back to the US. So to be determined on that front. But I do think it's safe to say from a Xero perspective, and I talked with a lot of people from Xero, the company there, that it was a really successful conference. It was a big draw. They had a lot of attendees, high energy. And so it was fun to be there, fun to be in the room where it happened, if you will. I'll talk a little bit about some of the themes that I saw at Xerocon. Some of you also may have been there, so feel free to jump in on the Q&A and amplify what I'm saying, or add some different trends or themes that I might not have picked up on based on the sessions that you went to. For that matter, if you went to a different Xerocon, like in London, feel free to chip in there. And then similarly, we'll sort of expand on that, sort of, what does future of accounting and tech look like, which is a pretty broad topic. And then any personal observations that you all have on sessions, if you happen to attend any, or I'm happy to chime in on that. But I think we can advance to the next slide. We'll see what that one says. So where does Xero fit in this high-level competitive general ledger landscape? Most people would say that things have shaped up a little bit like a Coke Pepsi battle, where you have Intuit and Xero. Intuit tends to have particularly high market penetration in North America. US, Canada obviously has a global presence with quite a bit of penetration. Also in the UK, Western Europe, some in Australia and beyond. And we certainly see that reflected in our usage statistics at Uncat. Xero, meanwhile, is especially strong in Australia, where it's from, New Zealand, because they're based there in that area. And then obviously in the UK and in Canada, and increasingly in the US, right? So they're making a big push. One of the trends that I'll start with first that evidences that push is that in the last 18 months, Xero has gone from having about 20 bank data feeds that are natively integrated with Xero to having more than 700 in the last 18 months. And obviously having data feeds stream in from banks into their core platform is key to adoption and key to you all as accountants and bookkeepers for supporting your clients. So I think that's pretty high up on the evidence list of they're making a big push to support banks based in the US and Canada in order to support more clients here. And that's something that they talked about during the conference. A couple other themes, and we have more slides too, but since this slide touches on them, how Xero is evolving to meet the needs of modern accounting firms. They're adding a number of features. I'll touch on a couple of them quickly here. They've improved their W-9 workflow, so you can request some of those right from the interface and get answers back directly from your clients. So that's helpful. They've been improving the security stance of the application. There was a secure app to begin with. They're investing in that even more, which hints at they're going increasingly upmarket to be able to serve some of the larger firms that are going to do security audits. And Jared has expertise in that area as a cybersecurity expert. So, Xero continues to invest in security, which of course is important because they're handling financial information. They have a better mobile application. So the mobile app keeps getting better and better. Attendees have talked about that, right? So they're continuing to invest in the mobile experience, which is increasingly important for lots of clients out there, as well as for the firms that use Xero as a platform. And then there's a couple other things that I'll mention. Let's go to the next slide, and I'll see if they fit in there. Otherwise, I'll incorporate them. I'll talk about Uncat in a second. Let me hit on a couple more of the themes from Xerocon first. And one was AI. No surprise there. Not a day goes by that we don't hear about developments in AI, things that have happened in the marketplace, in the industry, how it continually, gets better, smarter, or maybe has some hallucinations and has some issues too. In the case of Xero, what they announced was what they call JAX, so the name of their generative AI agent. It stands for Just Ask Xero, JAX. It's in beta now. You can go to xero.com/justaskxero and sign up for the beta if you haven't already, and give it a test. But this is a place where you can ask questions like, what's the total value of outstanding bills for this given client? Or a question about tax code. Or when's the last time I sent a report to this client? So any number of things that would be in Xero, you can ask JAX questions and get answers back. And so they spent some time, obviously, at Xerocon promoting that, getting people excited about it. And so it's out there now in beta. Some of you may have used it already. If you have, feel free to type into Q&A.
Brandon, did you see people that were interested in that particular feature versus, just getting it out at the core user interface? In the context here, for those that may be familiar with Gen AI, is we see a lot of push from accounting companies trying to add that in, but often people just want the application just to work. Put that in quotes. So what did you see from the attendees as far as interest there?
Yeah, I think obviously just working is important, right? Table stakes. Software needs to work well and be as intuitive as possible. That said, if you can save a few clicks, if you can save some steps of having to go to reports and select a date range filter and see which reports have been sent versus asking a natural language query of, hey, when was the last time I sent a balance sheet to the client? And it just tells you, hey, it was sent out on this date. Or what is the aggregate number of outstanding bills? Or have all the invoices for last month also been sent out this month, or are we behind? Things like that, I think, are time savers, obviously for the firm, also likely for the client. So I think there was general excitement about that, and also just curiosity. They were just introducing it, so most users have not had an experience with it yet. So people are game to A, try it, and B, come to their own conclusion. Is it going to be helpful for their firm? Is it going to be helpful for a few clients, all their clients, most of their clients? So I think it's to be determined, right? Proof of the pudding is in the eating. We'll see how good it is now, and I suspect, as with most Gen AI, it will continue to get better as they iterate on it, as they add more data, as they learn what people are searching for, and they can invest more resources in sort of honing those queries and increasingly, flexing the muscle of prompt engineering. Sort of the key to getting a good answer is structuring your question in a way that, AI can reasonably present you with an answer that you would expect and want. So I think a lot of their investment will be in that department. A couple other key things that I noted down while I was in Nashville. This is good for us also, but Xero definitely highlighted the importance of streamlining and automation and their app ecosystem. So Uncat is obviously on the Xero marketplace, as are hundreds of other apps that do everything from practice management to expense management to reporting to workflow automation, et cetera. So they're definitely relying on a pretty broad base of partner applications to enhance and supplement the core Xero experience. And certainly that was evidenced by the Expo Hall, which was a full house, several dozen vendors exhibiting, including us. We were right toward the entrance next to the convertible. That was not something we requested or planned, but we were lucky to be there. So we got to kind of greet everybody as they came in. I was hoping they do a raffle for the car because it was magnificent, but they didn't. It was just
I would
it was
take
just a
it.
showpiece. Yeah, I wish. There were three other things that I noted that I wanted to highlight here today because I thought they were interesting / important. This is the case with most of the accounting and bookkeeping conferences I've been to over the last 5 years, which is to say there was an emphasis on continuous learning, right? It's a conference with sessions with subject matter experts, so learning is important, but also trending from, we'll call it pure play compliance, where tax is filed, were documents submitted, are the books done properly, will it pass basic accounting standards, into strategic advisory, right? How can we get in front of clients? How can we suggest to them better cash flow management? How can we deliver them reporting that enables them to grow their business, whether organically or through investment or through mergers and acquisitions, right? So having those types of conversations. So at Xerocon, they did emphasize, sort of their desire to continue to support their user base in, obviously in compliance, because that's table stakes, but in transitioning from pure play compliance into more strategic advisory services for their clients so that they're a mission critical piece of the professional stack that supports those small businesses.
I mean, we'll add there that we see that the more enterprise focused accounting platforms, I mean, like the SAPs of the world and even custom solutions that people build in NetSuite and large enterprises, they allow the ability to very specifically code your accounting solution to support those compliance needs. I mean, there's a reason KPMG and E&Y and PwC and Deloitte don't use QuickBooks or Xero. They use these massive legacy systems, but that's because they can support those custom compliance needs. So it's definitely interesting to hear from you that that's something they're trying to push towards, especially as they want to move up market into larger firms.
Yeah, and I think related to that, sort of a trend toward strategic advisory, which, like I said, has been building over the past many years, is this notion of kind of like a cultural rebrand, if you will. So they kind of like emphasized, hey, look around. This is a dynamic, creative group of accountants and bookkeepers driving the industry forward. And yet the industry sometimes is perceived as being, simply crunching numbers, kind of an older industry, not necessarily dynamic, creative, et cetera. And so folks at Xero really want to emphasize that at Xerocon of like, hey, it's important to be in front of your clients, demonstrating continuous value, creativity, that it's not a, sort of older school traditional approach to bookkeeping and accounting, but more of the new approach, which has that kind of cultural rebrand aspect and is strategic in nature for your clients. And then lastly, and this relates to sort of its strategic reliance on partners and its choice to have an app marketplace, Xero did announce a strategic alliance with Bill, formerly known as Bill.com, related to paying bills, obviously accounts payable. So now you can pay your bills in Xero directly from Bill, and that sort of, from Xero's perspective, takes advantage of Bill's 5.8 million members, right? So they have a lot of reps in paying out to various vendors. They're on the database, they keep track of them, and so it helps to streamline that on behalf of customers. So I thought that was an interesting announcement as well. But yeah,
that's interesting, especially because I mean, QuickBooks recently dropped Bill as a main partner. Am I remembering that correctly? And then Xero's picking them up. I mean, that's interesting to see the dynamic there.
Yeah, there is an interesting dynamic in sort of the competitive marketplace between let's say QuickBooks and Xero, in the sense that I think the earlier in the year announcement of QuickBooks was that they announced their own payments feature, versus having the built-in integration into the app of other apps like Bill and Melio. And so you can still obviously use Bill and Melio, and thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of businesses do, and it integrates really well with QuickBooks. But now Xero has announced sort of the tighter, more built-in integration with Bill. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next year, 18, 24 months, and how those competitive sands continue to shift between the two big players. But obviously there's also a lot of other, players in the space. Certainly they don't get airtime at Xerocon because it's a Xero-focused conference, but you've got other apps. You mentioned some of the big enterprise apps earlier, like an SAP and a NetSuite, and then you've also got a long tail of apps that serve small businesses like FreshBooks and Wave, et cetera. So it'll be interesting to see how those all continue to compete with each other. But that's kind of a wrap up of Xerocon. I'll add simply that Nashville is a great venue for a conference. I hope they come back there someday. I imagine they'll move the conference around to other cities in the future. But Music City is a great place to have it. People had a great time. The food was sort of brand aligned with Nashville, which is to say, like, hot chicken and other Southern favorites. And then people had a great time just exploring the city because you have, every bar and honky tonk in Nashville has like really, really high quality musicians playing in it, or making a living playing music, or wanting to make a living playing music. And so people seem to really enjoy themselves at the conference, which was cool to see. All right,
Absolutely.
let's continue on.
Venue was it? Last question. Was it at the conference center, or was it somewhere else close by?
Yeah, it was at the main convention center, right downtown. So yeah, it was a pretty big show for Nashville. So lots of people.
Sweet. Well, I move on to the next slide.
Yeah, easy enough. So yeah, and this is credit to Jared. So he's the architect of Uncat, and we launched originally in support of QuickBooks Online, and then quickly heard demand for Xero, right, which is a testament to their market penetration as well. And so he was able to expeditiously build an integration with Xero, right? It's web first. Their support team was excellent. Good API documentation, so we were able to knock out a Xero integration, which I'll be able to show you at least in part live and sort of a mini demo in a few minutes, just sort of how Uncat works regardless of which accounting platform you're in. The big benefit, and I'll list several, but the overarching, because we're called Uncat, which obviously is short for uncategorized transactions, the big benefit of connecting Uncat to Xero is not having to chase clients for information about suspense transactions. And that's something that most firms do. Like I said at the top, for those of you that joined a few minutes after, usually with an Excel spreadsheet, they'll do an export and then send it to the client, or they'll put in a Google Sheet, share it with the client, and try to get responses back. But inevitably, that's a pretty manual process. You're having to run that export at minimum monthly, remind the client to answer it, and then manually take the client's answers and put them back into Xero one by one, which is a pretty tedious process. So where Uncat plays is you connect Uncat, tell it which accounts to sync. Usually it's suspense, might be a couple other accounts like ask client or ask a certain user at the client, and then transaction from those accounts sync into Uncat. We then remind the client on a weekly basis. That tends to work the best because they'll remember what the transactions were if it hasn't been longer than about a week, to come into Uncat and provide their descriptions. What was this transaction all about? What was it for? If they have a receipt or other supporting documentation, they can upload it through Uncat, and then we capture that and show it to you as the bookkeeper accountant so that you can then properly categorize. You can also add tracking categories. You can update a vendor. You can add a customer, et cetera. And for certain transactions that have been created from scratch in Xero, you can make those updates directly from Uncat and they'll sync into Xero. For transactions that have come in through the bank feed, one of the vagaries of the Xero API that we would like to get updated in the future is that you need to jump into the Xero interface to make those last mile updates. So once you're ready to actually categorize a transaction, we just have a simple button and it takes you straight into Xero to make that final update to the transaction. So really what Uncat is here to do is to help you communicate with your clients so you get information back faster, so you don't spend as much time on month-end close, and you can serve your clients a bit faster on the uncategorized front.
Yeah, we also see some people utilizing some of the more advanced features of the categorization. As an example, Xero has a large penetration in, as we talked about, Australia, UK, and even some of Canada. And those places have very particular tax rules that lots of our QuickBooks clients don't. So one of the features that Uncat offers that's used widely is the ability to pull in any transaction that might be missing a receipt. And even if that receipt is over a certain amount, and then that will force clients to add an attachment or a category or tracking category or something for very specific types of transactions, even if they're not suspense based. And that's important because when they go and report their taxes, especially in Canada and those other EU countries and Australia, they have to attach certain proof of compliance that they've actually made that purchase, beyond just saying, oh, this was an Amazon payment. It was uncategorized, but it was really office supplies. So that's, the Uncat module itself it starts simple and it goes about a mile deep in terms of things you can do. And especially for our Xero customers, they utilize some of that sophistication because of the complex tax rules they have.
Yep, 100%. You want to jump to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, this will be a quick one at a high level, because I think this is, we're preaching to the choir here. Key components, monitoring accounting firm, plenty of tech to contribute to streamlining and automation, which they promoted at Xerocon. And then just really superior client communication, because at the end of the day, what keeps the client coming back to your firm, it's a good relationship. It's knowing that, yes, all of the deliverables are being managed properly and on time and deadlines tracked. So there's a project management aspect to it and a compliance aspect to it. But really, you want to have that strategic advisory type relationship so that the client feels like I'm in really good hands here with the professionals that help me run my business, and they're enabling me to build a more robust, stable, and hopefully growth-oriented stance in the market. So, that's a key focus for us, and that's where we try to play and add value in the marketplace, is trying to principally save you and your clients time. And interestingly, since we launched the app during the pandemic, 2020, officially, and since then, sort of we ask ourselves the question, what does opening up more time for a firm do? And what we've seen it do is it creates the capacity inside firms to add more clients. So it's not that people are trying to create more time to take time off. It's not that they're trying to create more time to do other tasks, that by opening up more space time-wise in their firm, they're able to onboard more clients, because your services, the bookkeeping accounting services that you all provide, are in such high demand coming out of 2020 and beyond. And we're seeing a nice growth phase of small businesses, at least from our perspective, here in the US and hopefully worldwide, that it enables firms to grow, right? So whether it's adding Uncat or a whole host of other applications that save you time and energy, then the cost, and in our case, it's just $9 a month, so the cost is very low, is dramatically outweighed by the value that you get, which is opening up time to sign some additional clients.
Yeah, we have one particular customer that's been with us since almost the very beginning. Started out with us with about 25 clients, and they have two people at the firm, the owner and their kind of first mate of the company. And about a year ago, we had an issue on our side in Uncat, which rarely happens, but when it does, it can cause issues. And they said, hey, I need this fixed ASAP. So I went in there and fixed it. And after the fact, they were like, the reason that we've been able to go from, they started at 25 when they added Uncat, and now they're at 85 with just 2 people. And they said very clearly the reason they've been able to scale to that point is because Uncat and the other solutions they have on other unrelated things has enabled them to go to take 2 people and scale from 25 to 85 clients, because they're not having to chase down all of these clients and get information from them. And that was kind of a testament to just knowing, hey, Brandon and I were on the right track, because, if we can save them that time, they're going to grow the business. They're not just going to, you're welcome to always take more time off. We all love to do that. But we also like to make money. And that's what we like to help our customers do, is add more clients with the same amount of people, in this case, 2 people from 25 to 85, just by implementing this and a more modern technology stack.
Yep. What you said, 100%. That's what we're seeing. And it's nice to use an actual single firm example just to kind of show what we've observed over the last couple of years. All right, let's go to the next one, which may be case studies. You just did that one, so we're ahead of the game. Let's do the next one. All right, I'll show you around Uncat for just a couple minutes. Doesn't take long. It's a simple app. It's got, as I tell people, it's got 3 pages. So it's an easy app to demo. It's an easy app to learn. and you can get started with it with your clients very quickly. Let's see, it looks like you're still sharing, Jared. Do you want me to share, or do you want to?
I just stopped sharing, so you can share now.
Okay, cool. Let me jump in. All right. Can you see it okay, Jared? I think you can.
I got it.
Cool. So this is the homepage. Many of you have been here before. Perhaps that's where you registered for the webinar. As you can see, it's super easy to get started with Uncat. So the time savings kind of starts from page 1, which is to say, if you're not already using it, just click sign in with Xero. Click that button. It'll instantly create an account in Uncat for you. And then in the next step, you will connect your first client. So literally you'll be up and running in like 60 to 90 seconds is usually our benchmark when we're doing internal testing. If you prefer to sign up with email, you can do that too, but we want to make it really easy to just connect straight from Xero. Similarly, if we have any QuickBooks users on the webinar today, you can sign in with Intuit. Both are supported. So once you connect that first client, that enables us to start syncing transactions between Xero and Uncat. And that happens automatically in the background. Once you set it up, you don't have to come in and press a button every week or every month or check in on it. I call it the little engine that could. It just syncs information in the background. So when you first have connected a client, it'll present you with a settings page, and it's reflected here in our overall settings. And I won't show you every bell and whistle in Uncat. There's a lot of really powerful filters and settings that we've built in that allow you to customize the experience for yourself and for your client. But the key ones are you can choose which accounts you want to sync. So Ask My Accountant, Suspense, etc. You can choose as few or as many from Xero or from QuickBooks as you want. And then here you can choose how far back you want to sync. We go back 3 months by default. If you need to go back further than that, let's say it's a new client, their books are a mess going back a year or two, you need to do a cleanup, you can choose a date in the past, and we'll sync all those transactions that match the sync criteria back to that date. There's some additional overall settings here, but the ones I want to highlight are notification settings. This is how your client knows that it's time to come into Uncat and make some updates to transactions. So the default and our recommendation is a weekly cadence, and we send out a notification by email and also optionally by text message if you put in the client's phone number. And that way the client can simply click through in either of those messages, what we call a magic link. And by clicking that link, it takes them straight into Uncat. So importantly, your client never has to create or remember a password. They never have to create an account with Uncat. It gets generated automatically when you invite them. And they don't even have to have a Xero or a QuickBooks login. So whether or not they even have access to their core books, you may be running all their finances for them and they're focused on running their restaurant or manufacturing company or whatever it is that they do. They don't have to have a Xero login in order to use Uncat. So they'll just click through on that magic link. It'll take them straight in. The dashboard settings is a way for you to customize Uncat. The default is you're asking for the client to provide a description of a transaction, optionally a receipt, and you'll take it from there. But if you have a client that knows their own chart of accounts, they're in Xero with you, right? You guys are kind of partners in doing finances. You can tick this toggle switch at the top, and that enables you to be selective about which fields from Xero that the client can see, which ones they can update, and which ones are required. In other words, they can't pass go, to use the Monopoly analogy, until they provide a description, a category, a tracking category, a vendor, et cetera. You can choose which ones they have to tell you about in order to advance and to save and sync back to you. Down below is where you invite client users. Importantly, Uncat pricing is just $9 a month per connection. So you can have unlimited users. Invite as many users under each client as you want. This is where you do that. So you can add a user, you can put in their phone number. Like I said, that's optional in order for them to receive text notifications. You can also assign them to only see particular transactions. So if you only want them to see transactions in Ask Brandon, if I was a client user, you only want me to see my transactions that you have questions for me about, then you can assign those here. Similarly for payment accounts, if they originated from my credit card and I should only see those transactions, you can customize that. And it's a really popular use case. So those are the client settings. The overall settings, if you click the top settings, super easy. It's going to show you a list of the clients you connected. Here you can see we connected a couple QBO clients and a Xero client just for demo purposes. Here you can see your team. So again, you can invite as many users as you want. So if you have a team of bookkeepers or accountants that should be in Uncat managing clients, you can invite them all here. And optionally, you can assign them to only see particular clients. So if you've assigned particular clients to particular colleagues of yours, you can assign them here. That way it keeps everyone's workflow pretty streamlined in Uncat. They don't get overwhelmed by seeing too many clients. Lastly, from the settings page, certainly not least, because it's one of our most popular features, you can upload your own logo for your firm, choose the color to match your brand scheme. That way, when your client shows up, they're going to see the name of your firm, your logo, your color scheme right up front. They know they're in the right place, and you get a great brand impression. So I'll jump in and show you the dashboard. I'm going to use my Tiger. This happens to be a QBO client that's the same for Xero. Here, you're going to see a bunch of transactions that have been updated by the client. So we highlight them in yellow. Other transactions are still waiting on client input, so they're not highlighted yet. We can see the description that the client provided. And based on that, we can now go forward and do things like select a category or a tracking category. We can see any attachments that might be here or upload our own. You can also expand the transaction and apply a customer location, other information like that. And then when you're done, if it's able to be synced directly into Xero, you'll just be able to click save on the side. Otherwise, right under this category, you will see a button that says update in Xero. And by clicking it, it will take you straight in, and you can make that final category update and other key field updates when you're in the Xero interface. So super easy. Uncat's added value by saving you the time of going back and forth with your client. A couple other bells and whistles. There's a lot you can do in the dashboard. You can click on any column header to sort. You can search for transactions. Like I only want to see the Amazon transactions to start with, to help keep you organized. You can also do things like sort by account or by line amount or by date, etc.
Update,
So,
bulk update,
yeah, go ahead.
update lines, all that stuff.
Yeah. Yep. And you can see multiple clients, right? So when I'm done with this client, then I can easily just scroll down and go to the next client. I don't have to have a whole bunch of clients open in different browser tabs. I can kind of take care of month-end close all from one screen, which makes it really convenient. Next to the transactions tab, you'll see requests. This is the place where you can come in and ask your client for something. Maybe it's a W-9, maybe it's a bank statement, maybe it's just a notice that the next tax deadline is on April of not 15th this year. Maybe it's a different date because the 15th falls on a weekend. Things like that, you can communicate with your client here. And then receipts, which I mentioned earlier in the webinar, but this is where it all happens. Your client, and you for that matter, can upload receipts by dragging and dropping. You can select them from your computer. You can also come in and email them directly to this. This is the custom email address that each user gets that's unique to them. So you can always forward a receipt in as an attachment to that email address and we'll parse it. Similarly, you or the client user that is reporting to you can text message their receipts into this number. Whichever method they use to get the receipt in, our app then scans the receipt, looks at it, extracts the key information, and then looks for matches in Xero. And it will present those matches to you so you can complete the round trip. Or if there are no matches, for example, cash transaction, it's not going to come in from the bank feed, then you can actually create that transaction from scratch from Uncat and then attach the receipt to it in the process. So it's a really nice, clean workflow for expense management, for making sure that you have receipts for all the transactions that you need or want them for. Obviously, Jared did a great job building this because it's extremely powerful in the background, but in the front user interface standpoint, it's very simple. It's very approachable. It's easy for clients to understand what's happening here and to figure it out. So that's the receipts tab, and that's one of our big feature rollouts for 2024. Those are the main things
So we
that
have
you need
a
to know.
question in the Q&A about assigning, if somebody has multiple Amex cards for multiple partners under one account, they have to query all partners for those transactions. Can Uncat query the individual partner that makes the charge? And yes, you can do that. That is all you would have to do is set up, Brandon will show you, set up a payment account for them. What you would do is if it's one card, you could set up a payment account for that same card for each person. And then when that comes in, you would just set up like a rule on that side in Xero. And when it comes over to Uncat, it'll be shoved into that particular bucket. The other way you could do it is if you have multiple suspense accounts, one for each user, you could assign the transactions from that person to that suspense account, and then it'll basically divvy them up in Uncat. And the other key here is that there's a client admin. So whoever's the owner of that whole company can see everything. And so there's always that fallback where if the individual person doesn't go in and take care of it, the admin itself can go through and fill out those transactions.
Yep.
Thank you, Jay, for the question. Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully that helps. If it doesn't, just let us know.
No, for sure. That's it's a very comprehensive description. And I will say it's a very popular use case and one that we added for specifically that reason. So people had multiple client users with different credit cards, all out there spending money. Each one should kind of know about their own transactions, but not necessarily everybody else's. And so folks want the ability to assign particular payment accounts, aka credit cards or other sources, to particular users. And so being able to do that in Uncat has been a really popular feature. Are there any other questions that you all have? And I will say writ large, questions about Xero, questions about Xerocon, questions about Uncat, certainly we're happy to answer those live now. And also if you don't, and Jared, you can add this into the chat if you don't mind. Feel free to share mine and or your email address. If you have questions after the webinar, we will circulate these slides. We'll circulate a recording to everybody that was on. But if you think of a question after we sign off, feel free to send it over by email. We're happy to help you out. I would emphasize as a consumer of a lot of software, right? We make software, but we also use a tremendous amount of software. I find the best way to figure out if something is going to be a big value add for us in our company is I go in and test it out. It doesn't take long. And for us, it's a free trial, goes for a week, doesn't require a credit card. You can test it out with a client or several clients, run it through its paces, ask us any questions that you have along the way, make sure your workflow's optimized, and hopefully it'll be a great fit and save you a lot of time. But it's pretty easy to get started with it.
And I'm typing this answer out now, but Christina asks about, is there a mobile app and is it easy for clients to use on their phone? And so I wrote an answer to that, so that the whole website, the whole app itself is mobile friendly. And we actually find about 25% of our clients exclusively use their phone. And I track that from my side. So while there's not an app, or we don't want to make people install another app, that's the beauty of the Magic Link. If they get a really easy use case is put their phone number in. So when it's time for the reminder, they'll get the text about how many transactions or requests or receipts they have to go in and update. And they click that link and it'll bring them straight into on their phone into Chrome or Safari or whatever. And the app will scale down to that level for them to be able to just quickly press into the field, type it with their keyboard, click save, and then it goes over to you. So we have many people that use that, and a lot of our clients that are like influencers and creative professionals especially do almost exclusively use mobile because they're constantly on the go. But I always love to say that we have clients that are in their 80s. We have clients that are much younger than me, and I'm only 29. So we have across the board tons of different customers and clients that are from all different age ranges and backgrounds that will use a mix of mobile or web or just one or the other.
Yep, 100%. It keeps it simple, right? So on the client side, not having to set up an account or remember a password is a nice time savings. Not having to download an app, not having to remember to update the app, maintain it, make sure it's supported on their device is also a value add because it's just going to be supported in any mobile environment, whether that's a phone, a tablet, some other form factor. It should work in those popular browsers. So typically I say, if you're on an iPhone, if your client's on an iPhone, it'll pop open in Safari because that's the default browser. If they're on an Android, it'll pop open in Chrome. If they switch the browser, this default, it's no problem. It'll work in that browser too. And we have plenty of users that use Uncat in Edge if they're on a Microsoft device. So that also is supported. But yeah, great question.
Mm-hmm. We have clients that access it from all over the world as well. So it won't be an issue if they're traveling and accessing it from overseas, or if you just have clients that are overseas in the first place. I mean, lots of our firms outsource to Philippines. So the fun fact is the third largest country that uses Uncat after US and Canada is the Philippines. And I don't see any noticeable degradation in performance when they're using it versus somebody down the street from me is using it.
Yep. Jared,
Thank
any
you,
other questions come in from anybody?
Not yet. No. Christina,
Okay.
Jayden, they're great questions. Thank you guys.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thanks for jumping in with questions. It's always, like I say, it always makes it more fun for us too. Trying to think of any other last minute announcements. For those of you that may have clients on multiple platforms, obviously today's focus was on Xero. Many folks at that conference had folks on multiple general ledgers. So if you do have clients on QuickBooks and you plan to be out at Intuit Connect at the end of October, we'll be there as well. So we go to both conferences. So we'll be out in Las Vegas. If you're there, definitely swing by the booth, say hello. We'll have little Beanie Baby cats that we're giving away that are super popular. So get there early. And yeah, that'll be the main next event that we're at here this fall. We look forward to
we
it
have
every
one
year.
more question from Jay
Sure.
Dent. I'm watching Uncat, watching us in this webinar to bring my remote accounting back in house. Using remote accountants has not been effective for our clients, so I'll type an answer here. But I mentioned earlier that example of one firm that went from around 25 clients with 2 people to 85 using Uncat, and that's just really the power of it. So it is our job to make your life easier and simpler and reduce a ton of time on managing those clients. So give it a shot, add as many people as you want, and just shoot an email to Brandon@uncat.com or Jared@uncat.com. Or if you have any other questions, we'll be here to support you. But it's absolutely a use case. Thank you.
Love it. I think we showed everything.
Yeah, I mean, there's 1,000 more things to show, but everything important you've shown. And if anyone wants some more details, jump in. It's easy to figure out. There's a huge amount of support docs and Q&A stuff that's on the website as well.
And cat pictures, perhaps most importantly. So yeah, got the right background. So yep, uncat.com. Let us know if you have any questions or how we can help. And we appreciate y'all spending time with us. Good to meet you, and reach out if we can do anything to help you and your firm grow.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brandon. And thank you everyone for taking time today with us.
You got it. Thanks, everybody.